Well, the mic is open once again. I'm Alan Hoshida. Finally, college football is here. I say finally, but a lot of you out there are probably chomping at the bit to have college football back. It is week 0, and that means the University of Hawai is going to be playing football this weekend because they play pretty much every week 0 because an opponent is going out to Hawaii for some preseason football. Yes, they have to get the job done on the field, but the opponent usually has some pretty cool extracurriculars, activities, team bonding stuff going on This week, it is Stanford going out to Hawaii to take on the Rainbow Warriors for their very first matchup. So you had to think, all right, we're right here in the Bay Area, going to the 808. Allen's connected through all that. Who's he going to bring on? Well, we're bringing on Rich Miano, color analyst for the Rainbow Warriors on Spectrum Sports, but he is also a pillar of football, high school, college, pros in Hawaii. He just has done it all, and he's also pretty intricate in anything you see. You know, the Polynesian Bowl. He's the director of football ops there. So we're going to bring on Rich. Great conversation, talk story like no one else. So I hope you enjoy. Rich Miano, one of the godfathers, as I like to call him, of Hawaii football. Doesn't matter the level. If you want to know about Hawaii football, Rich is one of the guys. So I wanted to have you on today because we're getting close. You know, the leaves are turning over here in California. So they've got preseason football over there. You got high school football. That means it is football season, my friend. And first and foremost, before we get into that, because I always have to start the pod with this, the mic is open. We all have lots of things on our chest, a lot of things that grind our gears. Is there anything that you need to get off your chest here before we get going?
Yeah, I just wish the off season was shorter, in terms of football, whatever it is, high school, college, the NFL. And I know these guys, because it's such a contact collision sport, obviously can't play all season. But at the same time, waiting for football season is like watching paint dry. And I'm so excited that we are approaching this season. The NFL started their preseason. High school football in Hawaii, which starts normally earlier than most states, has already started. And we've had a marquee matchup, Kahuku against St. Louis. And then college, the University of Hawaii plays Stanford, a little Northern Cal love. That's going to be a big opening. And that's just a week from today. And I'm not sure when you're broadcasting, but next week, Saturday, coming Saturday, a week from today, Stanford against Hawaii. And that's the whole Frank Reich thing with Andrew Luck and hopefully the resurgence of Stanford football against a Hawaii team that I think is maybe, I wouldn't say peaking, but they are definitely building.
Yeah. You're such a junkie, though. Most people are like, I could take a few months off. Let's get back. You're such a junkie. You're like, no, let's go 2 weeks off. Get them back in there. Let's watch some more football.
Yeah. And the reason for that is to think about it, right? Because of the time difference, we can wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and watch an NFL game, be done with a double header at somewhere around, 11, 12, 1 o'clock, and then go surf, go work out, go golf, do all of those things. We still have the whole day to recreate, and I'm big in recreation.
Go get a plate lunch. You got plenty of time to do a bunch of things. But like I said, man, it's fall now. And I know how much you love football. It's been years since you played. A 10-year NFL vet. I almost said NHL because that's just what I say all the time now. But 10-year NFL veteran. Does it ever get old in the sense where, like, it's fall? You always feel like it's football season. Do you ever, like, what are some things that immediately come to mind when you know football season is here when it comes to, like, professional football?
I think, the advent of red zone, the ability to kind of shop for the game or the team that you follow. This fantasy football obviously has exploded for a lot of people, my son included, and some of my family members. But just, I think more of that is like a family thing for us because I'm so fortunate that my son loves the NFL, loves college football, loves high school football. I'm so, excited to be part of, obviously, the University of Hawaii broadcast and still being part of that program. And then doing some high school stuff with, the great Rob DeMello here in Hawaii on Cover 2. So it keeps me going to practice. It keeps me looking at all the different feeds in terms of getting as much knowledge as possible. The relationship I have with a guy like Jesse Sapolu, who we do a lot of things together with, to and I care and I like the 49ers is one of my favorite organizations. So
Hmm.
there are so many things that, whether you win or lose, whatever else, it brings families together. It's part of the fabric, especially here in Hawaii. I think more myopic, but at the same time, high school football is huge here. College football, we're the only game in town. And then we love to follow the Polynesian or the local athletes play throughout the NFL. And there seems to be more of those guys at the
Yeah.
highest level. And so, this whole relationship I have with the Polynesian Bowl, which has grown exponentially now on the NFL Network, it's just part of the fabric of me, but more importantly, the fabric of Hawaii.
You just gave us a great preview for everything that's coming up on this episode. We just give Rich the mic and let him go. He just touched on everything we're going to get to because he, like I said from the very start, he is intertwined with everything. But for you personally, you ever feel like, man, I miss going to training camp? I know for you it's the camaraderie, right? Like that's what you miss most about your playing days when you look back on them.
Yeah, and it is the camaraderie because you don't remember scores, but Eric Allen, a teammate of mine, just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I was blessed to play with him and watch his highlight reel in Canton, and I was, I could see 38 special all over the field, whatever else, and then you start reminiscing. You go back to an alumni event for the New York Jets or the Philadelphia Eagles. I just got a box from the Atlanta Falcons and I only played there 1 year, but they're still sending me gear and all that type of stuff. And then, it's just, keeping up with the guys, knowing the stories, whether it was coaching for the amount of years I coached, whether it was playing for the amount of 3 different teams. And it was actually 11 years, not 10. I wanted to correct you on that, but as long as my NFL pension is good and everything else is in place, I'm all good with that. But no, it's just you're right. It is the relationships you develop with the players and how they move forward and stuff like that. It's not the scores, it's not your record, it's not, I wasn't fortunate enough to play in a Super Bowl, but playoffs with all 3 different teams. But yeah, winning was important. Playing well was important. But to me, it's still a relationship-driven game because I try to tell people, the UFC, there's, certain things that are potentially tougher, takes a tougher person to play than football. But football is not for everybody, and you don't go drive around the neighborhood and go see like kids just beating the crap out of each other, bleeding, sweating, whatever else with pads on, hitting each other. You see AYSO, you see flag football, you see kids having fun playing basketball, whatever else. But football is not for everybody. And the fact that we've played this great game, I think the fraternity of respect is just about as great as any sport.
You said you don't remember a lot of scores, but I'm going to take you back. 1987, blocked field goal, and that 38 special comes down the sideline, and that's your only touchdown, right? You got to remember that. What do you remember about that play?
Well, what I remember about that play is we talked about blocking it and how important it was because the time of possession in the game that we needed to win this football game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think it was Boomer Esiason, whatever else. But what happened was they got the ball back. And then they were driving down the field, and I actually made an interception and sealed that game. So, you have some impact as a safety in any game you play, and whether you make 10 tackles, whether you have 2 interceptions against Troy Aikman in the first half, I don't want to brag or whatever. So, you impacted games. But there was actually what they call a Tums Neutralizer Player of the Week, which is the whole NFL.
Yeah.
Game, the NFL Tums Neutralizer Player of the Week for my impact in that specific game. You open up the New York Post, the New York Times, whatever else, and you're being hugged by your teammates with the ball in the air, and you made a touchdown, which is not a common occurrence for a safety, and it was my only one in 11 years. So you can never forget those type of games.
You got the ball?
I got the ball. As a matter of fact, I got a whole bunch of game balls because when I was with the Philadelphia Eagles, our defense was so dominant. Number 1 against the run, number 1 against the pass, number 1 overall. Wasn't done 17 years prior. Wasn't done still to this day. That they would all of a sudden, almost on a weekly basis, reward a game ball for the defense. So, but I do have that Jets ball, and that's something I'll cherish the rest of my life. It's getting kind of old. Hopefully that paint holds up.
I like that you said that because the next part of this is 1992. That's just exactly what you just talked about, right? maybe the most dominant, best defense the NFL has ever seen to this day. You had Reggie White, Clyde Simmons, I believe, on the other side, 1914 sacks. Yourself, you had a great year that year. 92, when you think about 1992 and what you guys were able to accomplish, how much pride do you still take in that?
No, a tremendous amount. And, it's arguably the greatest defense ever. Statistically, probably the greatest defense ever. People will talk about the 85 Bears. They'll talk about some other certain defenses, whatever else. But you mentioned, the Reggie Whites and the Clyde Simmons and the Seth Joyners and the Byron Evans and the Eric Allens and the Wes Hopkins and the Andre Waters. And, there was just a tremendous amount of talent. And what people don't remember is the year before, and everybody still talks about Buddy Ryan, and he was a phenomenal defensive coordinator. They were 1 against the run, 28th against the pass. There was only 28 teams at that time. Mm-hmm. Now we were 1 against the run, 1 against the pass, 1 overall. And that was Bud Carson, who was a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers when they had great defenses, the Rams when they had those great secondaries, whatever else. So we were under the auspices of a Bud, but it wasn't Buddy Ryan. It was Bud Carson. And to watch that defense operate, and we struggled offensively, but it didn't matter because we just controlled our own destiny. And those were the years where the Cowboys with Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith and all those guys, Jay Novacek, they were starting to really become a great dynasty, but nobody messed with our defense, bro. And it was so much pride knowing that, hey, we don't play offense. We don't play, we kind of play special teams.
Yeah.
But when we get on the field, we are going to dominate. We're going to lead in every statistical category. So to, be part of that defense and be under the auspices of Bud Carson and recognize that it is, no matter how you want to argue, one of the greatest defense in NFL history, that's another thing that you can bang,
right.
Not only was I part of the NFL, I was part of this great group of players, and it was so incredibly inspiring.
We're chatting with Rich Miano, 11-year NFL veteran. We're talking about the 92 Eagles. Reggie White, obviously, is a name everyone knows. So you talk story better than almost anybody I know on the islands. A Reggie White story. What do you have for me that is appropriate that you can say on a podcast?
The thing about Reggie is he called me Ice, right? Which was for Vanilla Ice. And, kind of a similar haircut and maybe a little facial structure, whatever else. But I remember him coming into work, WIP, which is like the largest talk radio station, probably per capita in the country at that time. It's still huge in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, by the way, I play for the Jets. You have the Giants. You have everything else going on in New York. I played for the Atlanta Falcons. It was great, whatever else, a little bit of transient kind of crowd. The Philadelphia fan base listens to that radio show. And I remember him coming in saying he just listened to 30 minutes of them talking about me, not Reggie White, and being seen at this nightclub or this place or whatever else. And, the whole thing, right? And because I was kind of a new member of the team. And he goes, you know what, Ice? I got a Bible and I signed the Bible. So I got a signed Bible by the minister himself, Reggie White. And the fact that he had a nickname for me, that even kind of makes me feel special. Okay, I do have a great Reggie White story because when he went and they showed a picture of him, because he took huge money to go to the Green Bay Packers where he ended his career. And it was on the latter part of his career. But I was on the punt team for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Reggie White was part of the defense stays. They didn't bring on the punt return team because it was 4th and 3 on the 50-yard line, whatever the scenario was. So I knew that I had to block Reggie White, and I knew about his forklift, and I go like, oh my God. And I go out there and I go, hey, Reggie, how you doing, bro? And I try to butter him up, whatever. And he goes like this. He goes, Ice, don't worry about it. I'm not coming. Because he could literally, I blocked some speed rushes. I blocked some guys that are a little bit bigger than me, but I did not want to have to protect in a punt scenario situation with Reggie White, who could literally forklift you and just swat you with like one arm and probably block the punt too. And he told me, I'm not coming. Don't worry about it. And I was like, thank you. Because I had to actually match up against the greatest probably defensive player and the most powerful defensive player that we've probably witnessed in our lifetimes. And thank God I didn't have to block him. But that was a one-on-one scenario with the great one.
See, I knew you would be good for this. I knew that I just get you going, you'd be ready to go. And before you were doing it for the Jets and for the Eagles and with the Falcons, you were there at UH. I know you're a proud alum and everything that comes with that. Now you're doing color commentator over there for the TV. You do a lot of stuff in the community. You do cover two, like I said. But let's go to UH here. Obviously in Hawaii, the biggest news this week. It's this week. It could change tomorrow, but they're going to get a stadium, allegedly, by 2029. Is finally there is approval. It's a big step. But as we know, Rich, with Hawaii, we don't know until it actually happens, because 2029 was also supposed to be like 2022, 2024. But with all that being said, this is a huge step for the university, and also not just the University of Hawaii, but for Hawaii itself to have a venue like this, 22,000 fans, to have this coming back into the ecosystem. It's huge.
Alan, and the thing that I'm called on the radio and opinionated stuff, podcasts, whatever else, because I love this place and I will die in the state of Hawaii. But at the same time, I've witnessed the real. I witnessed, building a softball stadium at the University of Hawaii, not be able to see home plate. You start witnessing the cost overruns. You start witnessing the slowest construction projects in the history of the world. And then you start realizing that my son went to San Diego State and they built Snapdragon, and they had a similar dilapidated off-campus stadium. They tore it down, built a new one. I think they're going on their fourth or fifth year where they'll be open. We still haven't even tore Aloha Stadium down yet to build. We went 250 million to 400 million. We went from opening up in 25, 26, 27, 28. Now it's 29. And there's no way that the stadium will be built before 2030. And I don't want to criticize the state of Hawaii for all its inefficiencies. But the one thing that makes me somewhat hopeful, it's a public-private partnership. And Stanford Card Development, who's a very successful local developer, has picked the same architect that is doing that's done Colorado State's, and that's a beautiful mountain conference facility. So there is some hope that this thing will get done. Now, what the time is, what the expenses are, that still remains to be seen. But yeah, it's been think about Timmy Chang when he first got the job, and that was 4 years ago. He could maybe tell a recruit that we have the renderings, this thing should be done in 3 to 5 years. That's a whole cycle of Chang, 5 years in terms of college eligibility, that won't not even have a stadium that has started construction. So now you're promising the next set of recruits that we're not going to play in a temporary stadium with bleachers, with a track around it, with no limited, facilities for concessions, for bathrooms, for, it's just, there's better high school stadiums in Texas, and I'm sure a lot of other states, than there is for the University of Hawaii. And it's a travesty, because University of Hawaii football is the engine that drives the bus, is the pride of this state, because it's such a tough Polynesian, blue collar, tough, hardworking people. We should have a great facility for this team. And you mentioned this is an entertainment district. This is not just for the University of Hawaii football. This is for everybody in this state. And we pay so much in so many different forms of taxes that we deserve an entertainment district for not only us, but for our 10 million visitors a year here to the state of Hawaii.
Well, and you need music acts, right? You haven't had very large music
Max
acts
Holloway could have, UFC doesn't come here because we don't have a big enough or good enough stadium. Music acts, soccer potentially professionally, or at least, training grounds for the Olympians, whatever it is, rugby. There's so many things that this stadium could be used for, and yet we don't. And we're a state and we don't have a professional team. And I really think that hopefully it's something we can all be proud of. Hopefully it can expand, because at the University of Hawaii, my senior year in 1984, we still hold the attendance record. 47,900 people went to every single one of our games, no matter who we played. And then when I coached with June Jones in 2006 and 7, we sold out a 50,000 seat stadium. It's not that long ago. And if this team does get better on a consistent basis, I will imagine they'll sell out a 22,500 seat stadium.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. I think so. My listeners may not be all in on Hawaii. You might get some from over here in California. Can you tell them what it's like when Hawaii football was rocking, when you had to sell out the attendance records, when Colt Brennan was doing what he did? Like, I saw the footage of that the UW game. I always talk about the UW game, like the paper coming down. It is a incredibly special. It's one of the most special places in college football, and probably no one talks about it
Yeah,
when it is humming.
yeah. When it was humming, I would imagine, the Coliseum. Obviously Washington has a great, stadium by the lake, whatever. But you have some great stadiums along the West Coast, but this thing literally reverberated. And as you mentioned, the confetti coming down on the field, the amount of tailgating. I don't know if anybody tailgates better because of the Polynesian Asian influence or whatever else, and getting to the games. Like, we drive our bus coming to the stadium 4 hours early. That thing would be packed with people tailgating, drinking, having a good time. Yeah, it was such a special environment that I think, not sure it can be quite duplicated in terms of playing Georgia on New Year's Day or whatever that is, being that good of a program, because the haves and have-nots have such a seems like a difference now. But I think it can be something that all of the state of Hawaii can rally around, and it does rally around, and it will sell out 22,500 seats. It will be something that we can be proud of if it's done right, and it's a winning program. So yeah, Alan, it's tough to explain to people that haven't been to a game, but we've had visitors that have played in many big stadiums. So like, oh my God, when Ashley Lee caught that touchdown in the back corner of the end zone against Fresno State, I think to secure the Mountain West at the time WAC championship, whatever else, man, they talk about the 12th man in Seattle. That place was decibel loud. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it was literally reverberating up and down, whatever else. And it was a crazy good atmosphere.
And now we focus to this season. It's a big year for Timmy Chang. His fourth year, he's entrenched. This is his program at this point, right? Like when I was there, when he gets hired, all the hoopla went with that. First-time head coach, weren't sure how he was going to handle things going back to his alma mater where he grew up. There's a lot that goes with that. But now year 4, 5 wins each and every season. What are the expectations now with Timmy Chang and company? He's got a quarterback in Micah Aloha that he believes in. He had Braden Shager. He was a good quarterback for the Mountain West, a very good quarterback for the Mountain West. I know you really like Shager bombs and everything that come with it. But as we enter in the season, Stanford, right here in the Bay Area, coming over to meet the Bows. What is the expectation level for the Rainbow Warriors?
And sometimes the glass is overflowing with me, and my optimism is something that people will question. Obviously I'm biased, and I want.
But you want to be more optimistic than pessimistic, because then what's the point? Like, why would you just be angry all the time? Like, I like that you're optimistic.
Yeah, and the thing is Timmy won 3 games his first year, 5 the second, 5 the third. I said 3, 5, 7, and so they didn't accomplish their goals. And I thought they were better than they performed last year. I thought they were a little bit underachieving, but they finished so strong. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, Micah Alejado, this guy now, it's almost Disney-like. And again, when you look at what he did in the second to last game, and it was mop-up duty, but he was 11 for 12 for like 145 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think it was, against Utah State. And it snowed that morning, where it was hostile. We were in a different environment. And then he came back the next week against New Mexico State and threw for 467 yards and 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. But then you go like, wait a minute. This is what this kid did at Bishop Gorman, one of the greatest high school programs in the nation. He had over 124 touchdowns and something like 5 interceptions. You go like, wait a minute, that's a typo. Yeah. No, this kid is only about 5'8", 5'9", but his anticipation, what I call anticipatory skills, he understands where he's going with the ball. It comes out quick. He avoids sacks. He throws a catchable ball. He doesn't have the strongest arm in America, but golly, he understands where to go with the ball, when to throw it out of bounds. Scrambles, can pick up some yardage. He's got a little quickness, a little twitch to him. It's almost magical. It's almost Disney-like, because we have a small sample, but that small sample was the best quarterback play in America the last game of the season by a freshman starter. So, he has 2 receivers coming back that are good. He has, I think, a running back stable that's gotten better. The defense, I think, is better overall. Again, I sound like they're going to win every game, and they're not, because nobody does. No. But 7 or 8 games competing for a Mountain West Conference championship, I think, is in the cards. And when I look at overall Timmy Chang, Chris Brown, this organization, I look at guys that have recruited well locally, recruited well on the mainland, getting some transfer portal guys, understand culture, understand the youth in the transfer portal, and even understanding NIL, which is so important. So I think that I know Timmy bleeds green. I know Chris Brown bleeds green. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Lions Den.
Surprised. Yeah, I'd be surprised if these guys don't play a better brand of football and people start jumping back on the bandwagon.
And the great thing when that happens is it's the last game in America. And everyone across the country is tuning in to University of Hawaii football because we are just junkies for football. And I look forward to it. I know it's like 9 o'clock at night over here when it happens. But I tune in. I listen to you all the time. That's such a cool thing that I think is so underrated, that you have University of Hawaii football fans strictly because it's midnight on the East Coast. They're flipping it on and they still get to watch some high flying football. Run and shoot. Is it still the run shoot, or is it kind of adjacent to the run and shoot at this point? But whatever it is, it's going to be high octane. You're going to get those half rolls, and they're going to try and put up a lot of points.
Yeah, so think about this, right? They just announced Spectrum, pay-per-view, whatever cable. We used to broadcast these games pay-per-view, and people would pay for them, obviously, and buy the whole season and buy individual games and go to bars and restaurants and watch this game. Well, we're free now, so we broadcast 7 games this year, and the other 5 are on some type of CBS Sports or ESPN Plus or whatever they're on, right? So the visibility is going to be greater from Hilo to Hanalei and hopefully on the mainland as you speak. And you're exactly right. June Jones talked about this ad nauseum before, that being the last game, you have obviously gamblers that are trying to either win their money back or win more money. You also have these University of Hawaii or just football fans that want to see the last game. So there is some great things about this program moving forward. Spectrum being free is one of them. The fact that every game will be visible to the viewers, and if they win, that viewership will increase. And if you start off a season with, playing well against Stanford and Arizona before you go into your Mountain West Conference schedule, I think there'll be great momentum for this football program. And you mentioned it is part of the run and shoot. Timmy Chang is starting to understand more of the June Jones, Mouse Davis, Tyler Ellison run and shoot philosophy. And Micah Alihado, that's all he ran at Bishop Gorman. So he's had thousands of reps underneath his belt. But they are combining some tight ends, some 11 personnel, some air raid schemes and stuff that he learned when he was at Nevada. So I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I think that if they can run the football and if they can protect, more importantly, it's going to be a lot of points. And I think the defense is good enough to watch where you're going to see physical, taking the football away. So this is by far the most I've been excited about Timmy Chang in this era and the direction of this program, literally maybe in the last decade, 15, 20 years or so, since the Nick Rolovich era.
Talked a lot about the offense. I know it's great. They put up a lot of points throw, but you're a defensive guy, and I know the name that I'm going to give you, you're going to like a whole lot. And this is a player that I want everyone out there who's tuning in at midnight at 9 p.m. to watch. Peter Manuma, baby. He is everything you want, and he could be a next level safety.
Yeah, when you talk about Talanoa, Hufunga, you talk about locally in the state of Hawaii, these guys named Leonard Peters and Nate Jackson and stuff, and here, the mane coming out of the back of their helmets, and you can't see their name because they have such a beautiful head of hair. But more importantly, they play like they're on fire. And he's always around the football, and he's very instinctive, and he's tough, and he gets the crowd involved into the game. He knows how to work the crowd, and his family, it must be like 300, 400, 500 people in that end zone that's right next to the football field. So, yeah, he's a guy that I would really pay the price of admission to watch, because being a former safety and mention some of these, I didn't mention Troy Polamalu. I did mention Talanoa, Hufunga. You start going down the list of these great Polynesian safeties. Nobody's Troy, nobody's even Talanoa at this level. But as a college football safety, yeah, you could just watch him and have, if you love defensive football, flying to the ball, hitting people, violence. Yeah, he fits into that category.
Number one, so he's easy to find out there. But yeah. I do want to say, I need you to talk to him, tell him, hey, let's not get as many targeting penalties this year. That's my only
tough
thing
for me to do.
Just tell him not to get them.
Yeah,
Just,
no, but the thing is, Alan, this little hitting zone that they have now,
I
the fact
know.
that we used to launch and hit with our heads, and I'm glad the game is safer. And, we want these kids to be able to play the next weekend. But man, once in a great while, it's going to be hard not to target somebody. I just hope he doesn't get
But he
thrown
got
out.
like 3 last year.
Yeah.
He
And,
got like way too many. Like that's a too many. He
yeah.
was if he can't play best ability is availability, right? So
Availability,
you
bro.
got to
I
get
agree.
there. But now you transition from your playing days to take over as an analyst. The other thing that we talk about on this pod is industry talk. And you're in the industry. You're a broadcaster now. I don't know if you'd ever call yourself as a true broadcaster. You'd always say football player first. But what was that transition like for you to get comfortable in that position?
Yeah, and I went radio first with the late great Bobby Curran, who has since passed and called I think 4,000 University of Hawaii sporting events. Then I got the wonderful opportunity to work with Robert Kekala, who has passed, and he was obviously a legend in Hawaii sports broadcasting folklore. And now I get to work with Kanoa Leahy, whose dad was a legend that I actually traveled with, and he called my games. So I'm working with a legacy. I'm working with a guy who is what I
So
call.
you really don't have to do a whole lot. You just got to
Yeah,
show up.
yeah. No, no. He's nationally good. He does
Yeah.
ESPN basketball. He can do
Yeah.
any sport. He's got a great sense of humor. He has great presence about him. He has a great voice. I mean, this is like set it and I will hopefully spike it down because if I screw this thing up, you just set me up perfectly. So, yeah, and Rob DeMello doing the pregame, halftime, post game. Some of the guys that are on that board with him or that sit in with him for those type of things. When the game starts, it's just talking about football. You don't have a lot of time to weave in these great stories that you can do as a podcaster. But I have to say that it's been probably a lot easier as a transition, knowing how much I love this sport. I do prepare for it, but knowing that you have a great play-by-play guy, and I've been blessed to have, and I'm not trying to patronize these people. They're all so good at what they do that I've been blessed to be part of the broadcast.
No, it's true. You've had some of the best in Hawaii's ever seen, and it does make your life a lot easier. And that's something I'm learning as a host now for Sharks Pre and Post is like set up my analysts, make their job as easy as possible, right? So if you do that, then they sound really great too. And then everything sounds great and everyone's entertained. And one thing about Robert Kekala that we all know is that, and going back to the 9 p.m. and the midnight, is out here on the continent. They loved him too because it was entertaining. He was as entertaining as a play-by-play guy as you'll get. And so if you can make entertaining TV, doesn't matter what you're doing, that is what you shoot for.
Yeah, no question, right? And anybody that's going to listen to a 3-hour broadcast, and especially when they're, it's not playing well necessarily, there is an art to this. There is something that, me as a former player, former coach, somebody that loves this program, you got to be careful about being so positive that you're not critical when criticism is warranted. So it is a delicate kind of line that we try to, straddle as much as possible because, we're interviewing the opponent's coaches too. There are people that are the opponents listening to this broadcast. And so we want to learn as much about the opponent as possible as we're spreading the aloha and the love for the University of Hawaii. So it's a delicate balance, but it's one that I think that we're well aware of. And again, if you ever watched Spectrum High School football in the state of Hawaii, you wouldn't believe the amount of preparation, professionalism, the cost of broadcasting. I mean, you see the big truck, you see the monitors, whatever else. That carries over to the University of Hawaii. And I'm not saying we're better than any national broadcast in terms of talent necessarily or whatever else, but there's so much pride in Spectrum and there's so much pride in the community of having good broadcast. I say this, there's not many things that the state of Hawaii is number one in terms of being the best at, but I would challenge anybody to say there's a better broadcast of high school football. I would probably challenge anybody in terms of where we are. We're not a Power 4 conference or whatever autonomous 4, whatever you want to call them. But there's a lot of pride that goes into this broadcast. There's a lot of money that goes into this and a lot of professionality. And because we care and we want to be good.
Well, it's just like any regional, right? Your region is Hawaii, and so when national does take your games, like it does for University of Hawaii, there's things that are super noticeable. And as me, watching it now, as someone who was in Hawaii and took pride in trying to pronounce everybody's name correctly, because like that's how you speak to the people. And if you
Yes.
if you do your best to pronounce it, not your best, but do it right, that's how you get it. And the most frustrating thing for me is when it goes national. I would say 4 out of 5 names are butchered. Like,
Yeah.
and like, so that's to your point is you take pride in it. There's things that you just can't teach. And when Spectrum does it year in and year out from the high school level with you just do it naturally. And then when national takes it, it's noticeable because they can't replicate what is Hawaii. They can't replicate the people. Kanoa is a Hawaii boy. You are a de facto Hawaii boy. That's another story to get into at some point. Maybe you come back on the pod and we'll talk shop maybe midway. But you can't replicate the love that Hawaii people have for Hawaii because it's just so unique. And so that when it goes national, it's super apparent. It's 100% apparent. And I don't think you're stepping on anybody's toes. I don't think anybody would fight you on that. You can't call Hawaii football great unless you do it in Hawaii.
Yeah. And, that's so important, right? So, I was fortunate to play high school football here and college football here and live here for 50 years. My wife's Hawaiian, my children are Hawaiian. I still have a problem with some of the Tongan names, some of the V's, and even some of the Samoan names, whatever else. But you try as hard as possible to pronounce it right because it will endear you to the local population that understanding the importance of Tua Tunga Vailoa, Kennedy Tuli Masiali'i, there's some of these names that have to roll off your tongue
Mm-hmm.
due through many repetitions. But at the same time, there are sometimes, well, I'll say it slightly wrong or completely wrong, and Kanoa will correct me, Rob will correct me, and then I'll realize I made that. And sometimes I'll have to just say the first name because I don't want to butcher. I
Yeah.
don't want to desecrate these Polynesian names because it is so important to these families that you get it right. So that's one of the toughest part of this job that we have. But at the same time, I know you and I know Rob and I know Kanoa, and most of the broadcasters will spend an inordinate amount of time trying to pronounce some of these names that are not that phonetically
Yeah.
easily that will roll off your tongue.
Well, DJ Uyunglele, well, as I
Yeah,
butchered it
yeah.
myself, but that was one for like the last few years,
Oh,
just was
tough one.
awful. And then national, it was just they just called him DJU, which was
Yeah,
always hilarious to me. But I mean, it's better, I guess, if you just kind of bypass the last name altogether. But I also think you owe it to the athletes to try to get their names right, and just to bypass it because you're afraid of it. That doesn't make you a better broadcaster. It doesn't challenge you, right? Like as an athlete, you want to be challenged. So if you just bypass these names, if you're in the play-by-play position or in my position when you're hosting, you're not getting any better. You're just defaulting to, I can't do it, so I'm not going to do it. And so I love that it challenges you to kind of learn a new skill. And I'm not as afraid of Polynesian names. Obviously, I still got work to do because I was there for 4 years, but it's just what you need to do. And you talked about high school football. Let's go there because the other part of what you do right now is really uplifting the Polynesian high school athlete, football players specifically, but I know you do some speed and other camps as well for other athletes. Where did this pride come from? Where did it come from that you wanted to give back to this culture that, you're not part of?
yeah. What happened was is like when I first started high school football, I didn't play my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, and I was at Kaiser High School, which is right down the street from where I live now. And when I started playing football, it was to make friends with the locals, with the Polynesians, to be cool, that whole thing. And so when you play high school football in the state of Hawaii and then you end up being the state championship and in what they call the Prep Bowl, which is essentially the state championship, we played in front of 31,000 people against Kamehameha my senior year in 1980. You go into Aloha Stadium and they're selling programs and the thing's rocking. And you realize this isn't like this where I came from in Massachusetts. It's not probably like that in maybe 46, 47 other states. Maybe Texas has, similar type of crowds and enthusiasm and love for their football program. But, playing Kahuku, playing Farrington, playing Kamehameha, playing anybody pretty much, and seeing the crowd size, the enthusiasm, the love for high school football, that's what endeared me to this great sport. And it was like, I couldn't believe that I landed on this rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and how important high school football was and how big it was. And it's still pretty big. And the crowds haven't decimated that much. The enthusiasm there. Rob with Cover 2, a weekly broadcast that covers from Hilo to Hanalei, so to speak. We do the neighbor islands. We do everything, working with such a talented group of people that care so much about high school football. And then coaching high school football, winning a state championship, and being in that arena just endeared myself to realize how important it is for the culture, for the people of the state of Hawaii. And again, you can argue Texas, but you can't argue too many other states in terms of meaning what it does to this state.
Yeah, and the Polynesian Bowl, you're the director of. It's become one of, if not the most premier high school all-star game in the country. It's played up at Kamehameha. And when you now think of it on NFL Network, when you first started this whole thing out, that's got to be kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I'm the director of football operations, so there's a whole group of, professionals marketing this game out of Las Vegas, and they do a phenomenal job. And then there's a board of directors that includes Jesse Sapolo and Troy Palamalu and Vaisika Hema and Reno Mahe and Olin Kreutz and all these great Polynesian football players. So when we started, we were streaming it and paying for the streaming. When we started it, we had limited sponsorship. It is now literally a multi-million-dollar game with Panini and Microsoft and Hawaii Tourism Authority and, first-class travel, buses, Rydell, the amount of players, the Tua Tagovailoas, the Marcus Mariotas, all of these players that have supported this and built this thing up over the last, I think it's 9 years now, maybe going on 10th. You're right, being on NFL Network, the Manti Te'os, broadcasting it and being part of who we are as a group.
Travis Hunter was just there
recently.
Travis
Hunter was here, right? You had, we are now, I think, and again, this is arguable, the number one high school all-star game in America. And the kids want to play for us. Why? Because it's in this beautiful state, because everything is paid for. They have beautiful swag. They have incredible a week of culture in Hawaii. It's like the Pro Bowl never wanted to leave to go to Orlando, Florida, and it was kind of an ESPN thing, but the players, 92% of them voted to stay in Hawaii. Trust me when I tell you, almost 100% of the players in high school football, the stars, want to come to the state of Hawaii and play in the Polynesian Bowl and be on the NFL Network and get the swag. It's become a huge ordeal and such a powerful thing for the Polynesian community.
But more than that, you also hold 20 plus spots there for Hawaii players. It doesn't matter. Like, obviously there's stars connected to the high-end talent that comes in, and that's great. It's great to have them here and to show them lives. But what you do for the local player to make sure there are 20 plus spots for the best of the best in Hawaii to be showcased, that means, maybe they're a two-star guy and they get to get on the field on NFL Network and someone sees them, someone hears them. That's the most important part of that whole thing, is that, yes, you're going to get the guys coming over who are the 5 stars. That's great. But the 20 plus that you get from Hawaii, for those families there, for everyone that you are doing to showcase them, that's got to feel incredibly gratifying.
Yeah, it is, right? And the fact that when you look at the math, 330 million Americans, we also get players from Samoa, Australia, New Zealand, wherever they come from, right? So we're like a worldwide organization, and you have 330 million Americans just on the continent. We have 1.4 million people here. So to get 20 to 25 Hawaii athletes, the exposure, the opportunity to play against some of the best. We've seen scholarships generated from that because of high-level play from some guys that they didn't realize how good of football players they were. So, yeah, you're right. And it's because the generosity of the Hawaii community, Hawaii Tourism Authority, the Sheraton Hotels, all the different people that we have that have made this game so great over the years that we're allowed to, by our board of directors, to have that many players. Because otherwise, there may be, as you mentioned, 5 stars. Sometimes there's none, 1 or 2. 4 stars, maybe 3 or 4, 4 stars if you're lucky. So we have great football here, but to play in this game, trust me when I tell you, every single family that has been part of this game has felt like it's like playing in the NFL and all of a sudden you make the Pro Bowl. This is the highest thing that you could possibly achieve as a high school football player throughout the nation, but it really resonates here in the state of Hawaii.
Yeah, they want to grow up and play in the Polynesian Bowl. Like that is, they
100%.
saw Tua Tagovailoa do it. They saw Marcus Mariota. They saw Matt Taiteo. They've seen anybody who is anyone in the state of Hawaii who made it out. They played in that bowl game. And so that's why it's so special to them. And I think there's a correlation. As this thing's gotten bigger, you mentioned per capita, the amount of Hawaii players in the NFL and Polynesians, but Hawaii specifically, the ratio is crazy, and it's just getting better more and more. And you're seeing it in the quarterback position. You're seeing it at the skills positions a lot more than you had in the past. Obviously, you always had the big boys up front, like Jesse, like you talked about. But now it's kind of dispersing across the entire field. You have Maris Leofau right now with the Dallas Cowboys. As the Polynesian Bowl's gotten bigger, more and more Hawaii players have made it to the NFL. And you can't help but think that there's some type of correlation. What is it that the NFL loves about Hawaii football players?
Yeah, and I don't want to desecrate his first name, but Tataroa McMillan as well, right?
Yeah.
For Manalo, first-round draft pick, seems to be a budding star in the National Football League. And you mentioned, did a great job, Alan. It used to be offensive and defensive linemen. That's all they came for. And then all of a sudden, you've seen this quarterback thing where we have numbers that are crazy in terms of college football stars, NFL players, whatever else, because we're mentioning the demographics and stuff. But it has grown to be somewhat, I think what the answer to your question is the Polynesian community in general, the respect of their elders, their coaches, is phenomenal. And it's one thing that I appreciate so much being part of this community. But also, I think the toughness. These players are tough. They don't get hurt easily. They play from the first whistle to the last whistle. They have long careers. I mean, you're talking about Jesse Sapola, 14 years, Mark Tuine, 12 years. You look at guys like Mosi Tatupu. You look at guys like, there's so many of these guys.
Yeah, 11 years. Rich Miano, 11 years.
No, you're talking about guys that play forever because of their work ethic, because of their values, because of their toughness. And I think that I always told people, if you can get a Polynesian player or 2 or 3, as we do these high school football camps, on your team, I don't care if you're in the Midwest, you're in the East Coast, or whatever else, it's going to change your culture. It's going to change your program. And it's really important, too, to get a coach, one of these young coaches that will bring this enthusiasm, bring this culture, bring their rice pot with them to wherever university that they land on. So you're seeing way more colleges and even in the NFL with Polynesian coaches. But then you're also seeing these guys going all the way to Chicago to play for some Division II team, Division III, NAIA. So you're getting pockets of these Polynesian local players all over the country. And trust me when I tell you, if you talk to their head coaches, they would love those kids and they're so proud and glad that they're on their football program.
Yeah, and they all usually follow, right? Like if you get a Hawaii football or Polynesian coach, you got a good chance of getting some of those boys to come with you. We see it all the time. And then if you get one, you get another, like over across the bay. Cal, they are a pipeline right now for Hawaii players. They're getting a bunch of dudes. Jaren's going over there. Aiden's going over there. Like, if you get them coming, they're coming, and they're going to continue to come. And it's all it takes is one coach to believe in them. And that's usually the other thing that I really respected about the high school Hawaii athletes. A lot of times it was the first. Whoever came at you first, it was going to be them because they prided themselves on that relationship. Obviously, things have kind of changed here with NIL. But I did respect that whoever got in on the ground floor, it tended to go that way. From my experiences, I know you've seen it a lot more than I have. But is that safe to say too that it's all about the bond and the trust that they have in these relationships that they have?
Yeah, and John Chiave Sagapolutelli is a perfect example, right? He signs with Cal, verbally commits, whatever it is.
Jaron.
Jaron, excuse me,
Jaron.
Jaron.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
No, you're
His
good.
brother, his brother's John, and John plays
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
University of Hawai. But anyway, I got the Chiave Sagapolutelli, and
You
that's the
nailed
most
that.
important
You
part.
nailed that. Yeah,
So
exactly.
he then all of a sudden Oregon comes in with a bigger offer. I'm not sure Cal came with a much bigger offer to counter Oregon, but he stayed true to the first person he committed to is at Cal. And I know Lopez right now from St. Louis can spin the ball Division One quality. He's verbally committed to Cal,
Why
as
didn't he
well as
start?
it's a long story. An interesting pipelines being developed at Cal, right? With these
Yeah.
with these Polynesian quarterbacks, Polynesian players, whatever else. But no, you're exactly right, man. There's something about there's more loyalty, there's more commitment, there's more doing what is right in this culture, and it's so respectful.
Yeah. And this goes back to the kids. And so I always end the podcast with dad talk. And you and I haven't had a whole lot of dad talk before because I just had a young one as I was leaving. I have a second one. And so I'm just a new dad. You are a seasoned veteran. How are you as a youth sports dad? Rich
Yeah.
Miano, the youth sports dad.
So my son was born with a disease called neurofibromatosis. So he was told very early he's not going to be a football player, and that was okay with me because I realized that hey, it's not the end of the world. But he played basketball. He
Yeah.
did speed and quickness. He ended up being a rugby player, believe it or not, which is another story in itself. My daughter paddles. She played volleyball. I try to tell my kids, that think about this. These people on the lower levels, when you're talking AYSO, whatever else, they're not getting paid. And if they're getting paid, it's a small stipend. They're putting in way too much time that does not meet their financial. They're doing it because they love the sport. And they might have learned it on YouTube. They may not even play that sport, but they're trying and nobody else is willing to do this job. So if you come across a bad coach, a bad official, a bad anything, and you think that's going to ruin your experience, you got to fight through that because there's coaches at the NFL that you may not agree with. There's coaches in college football that may not be the best coaches in the world. There's coaches in high school, and it goes down and down and down. But guess what? You're not perfect at what you do either. So when they make a mistake, when you get upset at them, whatever else is apparent, the worst thing you see is these parents that come onto the field and yelling at officials, yelling at coaches, causing.
Someone got physical over the weekend.
Yeah, we got people getting physical, whatever else. And I just think that, you know what, you have to recognize, do the best job you can do, making
Yeah.
your children understand the rules, the parameters, the techniques, all that other things, whatever else. And eventually, if they're good enough, hopefully they get to the highest level because we cannot live vicariously through our children because we didn't play in the NFL. We want them to play in the NFL and think that the coach is making a mistake because they're not playing enough. I mean, that's why I got out of coaching high school football
Yeah.
after 2 years. And I look at these coaches now, and not that I think that they're all saints, and not that I think that we should think that they're perfect, but wow, I try to appreciate them as much as possible because it is hard work.
Yeah, well, with that said, it came to mind here. You coached high school, you coach college, you're the director of football ops with the Polynesian Bowl. You talk to a lot of parents. You're around parents a lot. If you did have an issue, let's not talk about game like playing time because I don't think any parent should go to your coach and talk about playing time. That's up to the kid to establish that they deserve more playing time. But let's say something is wrong with something along the organization they don't like, or there's something they have an issue with something.
Yeah.
We're not talking about playing time because that's a whole different issue. How should they approach a coach or a director of that organization? What's the best way to be respectful in what they're asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to vary in scenarios, right? But it might be an email, it might be a text, depending upon how you communicate. But it's definitely not confronting them. It's definitely not putting them in a defensive position. So there are forms of communication. And maybe if it's something structural or integral or safety wise, or you see some kids doing Oklahoma drilling, they're 30 yards apart and they're just banging heads. You want to obviously stop, put an end to that as soon as possible. And sometimes you have to go to whoever their boss is, depending upon the severity of the issue. But yeah, you got to determine what it is. And nothing works worse than being offensive in terms of threatening or physical or whatever else, because that puts everybody in a different type of mindset. So the best thing to do is, how would you want to be treated as a coach?
Mm-hmm.
How would you want to be treated as your boss? How would you want to be treated as a person? And I think that if you follow those parameters and you recognize that, there's not going to be ever a perfect coach, and coaches make mistakes all the time. And sometimes you wish you had the ability to correct that mistake, and sometimes you do. Just be cordial, just be professional, just be just not confrontational. I think
Speak to them as you would be one to be spoken to, is something my mom always told me and my
exactly.
parents always told me. So if you just keep that up, I think that's just be respectful and try to come in this calm. If you come in calm and and not guns ablazing, I think you're probably in a good spot. It I can't thank you enough for coming on the pod, Rich. It was great. We touched on pretty much everything in Hawaii. We didn't touch on some things, and so we'll have you back hopefully. But I really enjoyed the chat, and I know you're getting ready for a very busy time for you. So time is our greatest currency, and I appreciate you for giving me a little bit of it.
Well, go Niners. And the last thing I'd like to say is, I grew up watching hockey, and the fact that you cover
Mhm.
hockey, I wish there was professional hockey in Hawaii, and I think the Polynesians would be great. But as soon as I go to Vegas or anywhere on the road, I'm trying to sit down as close to the ice as possible and watch the speed, the violence, the precision. You know what? It doesn't come off as good on television, but I respect any hockey player, and got to know Eric Lindros and hung out with hockey players in Philadelphia, and that was some of
Yeah.
the best times I've ever had.
All right. Next time you're on Ninth Island, go to a Vegas Golden Knights, San Jose Sharks game, and it'll be good for you. All right, bro. Aloha, and we'll talk soon.